Charleston County Historic Preservation Commission meeting. This meeting has been noticed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. This commission acts in review and recommending capacity for designations and removal of historic properties and districts. The commission also reviews proposed National Register of Historic Places nominations. The commission has final decision-making authority on certificates of historic appropriateness. My name is Tisha Smalls Brown, Chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. To my left is Ms. Donna Gardner, Pat Sullivan, and Dr. Michael Walsh. Welcome. Lori Leichner is not here yet. Anna Johnson is to my right, Pat Jones, and Jason Crowley. Please welcome our new commissioner, Dr. Michael Walsh. Dr. Walsh is actively engaged in preserving the culture and art and history on Sullivan's Island through his role as president of the Battery-Gadsden Cultural Center. He has also served as a board member and vice president of the Fort Sumter Fort Moultrie Historic Trust, which is now known as the Friends of Charleston National Parks. Dr. Walsh is also a volunteer, tour guide, and 18th century historic weapons reenactor for the National Park Service at Fort Sumter Fort Moultrie National Historic Park. Recently, Dr. Walsh served on an ad hoc historic preservation and design study group created by the Town of Sullivan's Island Council that studied preservation ordinances. He is interested in preserving the rich history of the Charleston area while balancing ongoing development. Seated at the desk facing the dais, Commission Attorney Mark Bell, Joel Evans, Director of Zoning and Planning. Staff, Joel, would you introduce staff, please?
Sure. Andrew Melisick, the Deputy Director, is here, as well as Emily Piggott. She will be presenting the educational material today. To my right is Savannah Murray and Monica Eustace.
Okay. I would like to remind you that in order to get a good recording of the meeting for the minutes, please speak loudly and clearly into your microphones. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the January 18th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion and a second?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Staff, would you please call the roll?
Tisha Smalls Brown,
Present.
Donna Gardner,
Present.
Anna Johnson,
Here.
Pat Jones,
Present.
Lori Leichner is not here. No.
Ma'am, if I can interrupt for a second, we'd like an affirmative vote to approve the minutes, not a statement of your presence here. Thank you.
Is there approval of the minutes? I approve the minutes.
Well, all in favor, well, first, any question or discussion? There are having, being there are no questions or discussion. All in favor. Sorry.
Are there any questions or discussion of the approval of the minutes? No questions or discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The next item is the recognition of the outgoing commission member, Lori Leichner. Are we going to, can we skip that one?
Yeah, I guess we can skip it and see if she comes a little later, so that we can present it to her. Thought she was going to be here, but
Okay.
she's not, so we'll wait and see.
Okay, when Ms. Leichner gets here, we'll recognize her at that time. The next item on the agenda is the election for the chair and vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'd like to call for nominations.
Before we do that, did we finish calling the roll?
Well, that was for, that call for roll was for the minutes.
Okay. Gotcha.
And since there was a unanimous, there was no reason to do that.
Thank you.
Can we nominate someone who's on the panel who does serve on the board but is not present?
No, I don't think we should do that.
That's fine.
Okay.
I have a concern about that because if we're nominating someone that's not here, what if they don't want to do it? I don't know.
And it is up to the board to nominate whoever they like, and then all members can vote for or not vote for anyone that is nominated.
I'd like to nominate Tisha Brown Smalls.
Smalls Brown.
Smalls Brown, excuse me. Tisha Smalls Brown. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'll second for discussion. Ms. Smalls Brown, you seem apprehensive.
I am.
Okay, for discussion purposes, we can have that conversation.
I would like to extend that opportunity to someone else at this time.
I would like to nominate Melanie Myler.
Second. Melanie.
Has anyone spoken with Ms. Millar to gauge her interest?
No, I haven't. No one, as far as I know, hasn't.
Members of the commission, and if there are concerns about it, I believe you guys can move to them, defer and the nominations for chair into the next meeting, and if that is what the body chooses to do.
Just for a question of clarity, so if Ms. Lechner is leaving the board, do we have a replacement for her yet? We do not. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to defer this to the next meeting. Election for chair and vice chair, since we seem to be unprepared right now with that.
Well, I would like to pose a nomination,
Oh,
if
you
I
have-
may. I'd like to nominate our newest member, Dr. Walsh.
With much gratitude, I would like to decline that nomination until I get a little bit better feel for what we're doing here. Thank you very much.
Figured I'd try anyway.
I believe there's a motion on the floor to postpone this until next meeting. I would second that motion.
Is there not another motion on the floor? The one, and you said for discussion purposes, that's why you seconded it.
I would like to inform everyone that the next meeting, which is March 15th, is a meeting that I will not be in attendance to due to my doctoral residency program that week. So, but you can still vote. Okay. So all in approval to defer?
I have a question. Didn't we have a motion on the floor before the motion we're about to pass in regard to deferring this matter to next month's meeting?
Technically, yes. You made a motion and I seconded
Right.
it.
So we kind of need to do something with that one.
What was the motion?
I nominated Tisha Smalls Brown,
And she did.
and Jason seconded it for discussion purposes. We had the discussion, but no vote was taken.
So
So
we can,
rescind it, we can make a motion to rescind it?
And if I make interject, then the main motion one was to nominate Ms. Smalls Brown to be chaired, so that was the main motion on the floor. Subsequently, Ms. Johnson made a motion to defer. Then the motion to defer then does take precedence over that main motion that was on the floor.
Okay, we stand corrected.
and that motion was seconded properly, correct?
And I believe so, but then Dr. Walsh.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now the floor is open to debating that motion to defer.
So if we do defer, Ms. Millar may be present, but Ms. Smalls Brown may be absent. So the question comes back to, are we voting to defer to have all commissioners present in order to vote on the chair? And if so, does that mean that we would then need to wait 2 meetings in hopes that everyone is present?
My motion to defer was not to have everybody present. It was to give the board another opportunity to get together and come up with a name or names of people who want to serve in the position. Because I really don't believe in voting for someone who is not here to even say whether they want to or not. As we've already seen, one person who's present was pretty much declining. So my motion was just to allow us an opportunity to talk about it and come up with a name or names for the next meeting.
So we can defer that meeting or that vote until the next meeting. I did state that I will not be in attendance. We can still go forward. Okay, all in favor to defer the vote until the next meeting, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All who disapprove, say nay. The ayes have it. Okay, the next item agenda is an educational presentation. Emily, please discuss.
Oh. No.
Thank you. So today's presentation will first give an overview of the Zoning and Planning Department functions. Then we'll move into the Historic Preservation Commission rules and procedures. And lastly, we'll talk about Robert's Rules of Order. So the Zoning and Planning Department operates under South Carolina state law, the Local Government Comprehensive Planning Enabling Act, which establishes a framework for how local governments in the state undertake planning. The act requires the creation of a comprehensive plan, and the county's zoning and land development regulations seek to implement the goals of that comprehensive plan. So this is just showing the 3 boards that the Zoning and Planning Department manages, including Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Historic Preservation Commission, of course. Each of these boards are made up of 9 individuals that are appointed by County Council. And of course, ultimately, certain applications go on to County Council approval as well. Our department only has jurisdiction over unincorporated areas of the county. One of our major functions is to draft and process changes to the county's planning and zoning documents, which is the comprehensive plan and the ZLDR. We also process applications for Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Historic Preservation Commission. And at the staff level, our department reviews subdivision applications and site plan review applications. Zoning and planning is also tasked with code enforcement for environmental and zoning violations. We also engage in community planning, take on special projects, and staff the Emergency Operations Center when activated. Our department also, of course, issues zoning permits, which are required prior to any proposed land disturbance, change in use, business license application, or building permit application. So now we'll move on to the Historic Preservation Commission specifically. So the commission acts in a review and recommending capacity for applications for historic property and district designations. And for a motion to pass in that case, it requires a supermajority, and then we need to move on through the county process. And the supermajority means at least 5 members, a quorum of the full body. So this slide shows you the process that the historic property designation application would follow. It starts with a pre-application scoping meeting with staff. moves on to application submittal, and then staff report and site visits, as well as notifications, before it moves to the commission and then ultimately through the council process. The historic property application is a voluntary application process by which an individual property may request to be listed on the Charleston County Historic Designation List. The right-hand side of your screen here shows all of the required application items, which include a complete application form, letter of intent addressing the approval criteria, and recorded deed and plat for the property. Here are the approval criteria that applicants will respond to and the commission and council will use to render their decisions. The applicant is only required to respond to at least one of these criterion. This slide shows you the process that a historic district designation application would follow, and it is the same process that we saw previously with the historic property application. Similarly to the historic property application, the historic district application is also a voluntary application process, and it requires a few additional items, including a map showing the proposed district boundaries and a petition of consent showing at least 51% of the registered voters within the proposed district are in support of the application, in addition to the signed application form and letter of intent addressing the approval criteria. Here are the approval criteria that applicants will respond to, and again, commission and council will use to render their decisions. And also, again, in this instance, the applicant's only required to respond to one of the approval criteria. The HBC is the final decision-making authority on requests for certificates of historic appropriateness, and passing motions require a simple majority, which is the majority of the members in attendance at that time. Mm-hmm. The CHA process is a required process prior to the issuance of zoning permits and prior to site plan review approval for properties or districts designated historic or properties within 300 feet of the property or district boundaries. And the purpose of this process is to determine if the proposal will negatively impact the historic site or district. It creates an extra step in the permitting process and ensures that the public is notified of work being done on or near historic sites. One thing you'll probably notice has been removed here is the subdivision application requirements. That's because we have looked at state law. State law puts the responsibility of subdivision on the Planning Commission. So we have removed that from the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. The CHA application, This is the process that the CHA application would follow. It starts with the same pre-application meeting and application submittal, followed by staff report, site visit, and notifications. The difference with this application is that the HPC is the final decision maker, so the process does not continue on to County Council. The CHA application requires a signed application form, restrictive covenants affidavit, letter of intent addressing the approval criteria, a copy of the recorded deed and plat, and a site plan showing the proposal. The CHA approval criteria is shown here, and applicants must respond to all of the applicable approval criteria. Next, we'll discuss the Historic Preservation Commission's rules and procedures. Section 1 discusses that the Zoning and Planning Department is the administrative office of the commission and goes over our location and that the authority for the commission comes from Chapter 21 of the County Code of Ordinances. Section 2 describes that meetings will be held monthly or as needed, and that 24 hours notice or notice as required by the Freedom of Information Act shall be given. Section 3 states that the commission is made up of 9 individuals appointed by county council and that a quorum shall be 5 or more members. Section 4 states that each commissioner is entitled to cast 1 vote on each matter, and commissioners must recuse themselves if they have a conflict of interest. In red, you can see some new text that staff will be proposing, which would codify the process that the commission already uses for amendments to motions. It states that amendments to motions on the floor shall require the first and second to the original motion to agree with the suggested changes. The amended motion shall then be voted on without a separate vote to approve the amendment. Section 5 outlines that the meeting agenda will be available at least 15 business days prior to the meeting, and that complete applications must be received 6 weeks before the commission meeting. Members of the public wishing to speak in front of the commission must sign in, and the chair may impose time limits. Section 6 discusses that meeting drafts will be provided to the commissioners for their review, and that meetings must be audio recorded. Section 7 states that meetings are conducted in accordance with Robert's Rule of Order, except when there is a conflict between these rules and procedures or with state law. Section 8 discusses the duties of the chair and vice chair as elected by the commission for one-year terms. In red, you can also see another staff proposed change, allowing for the election of chair and vice chair to occur at the March meeting. This is proposed to better accommodate election years like we're seeing today. Section 9 discusses what items the HBC has purview over, as well as the other powers and duties of the commission, which includes things like educating the community about the county's historic resources and providing adequate public participation in the local historic preservation program. Section 10 is concerning conduct and outlines the process for decorum during debate. It clarifies that only the chair of the commission may speak on behalf of the commission, and that commissioners may request information from the planning director, provided that the chair is notified. Section 11 discusses the administrative duties of the planning staff, which include items like technical assistance, analysis and recommendations, preparation of the agenda and meeting notifications, and keeping of the minutes. Section 12 outlines the process for notifying about vacancies on the commission and requires that in the event of a vacancy in the officers, the office must be filled no later than the second meeting following the vacancy. Section 13 covers member attendance. It states that notification is required when a commissioner is unable to attend a meeting. Commissioners are allowed 3 excused absences during a term year. If a commissioner has over 2 unexcused absences during the term year, it shall be construed as a resignation. Section 14 states that these rules and procedures may be amended at any regularly scheduled meeting, provided that the proposed amendment was introduced at the meeting before. Next, we're going to move into Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order were first written in 1876, and it's a manual of parliamentary procedure that governs discussions and decision-making in non-legislative organizations with boards of directors and committees. The framework helps to have systematic, orderly, and goal-oriented meetings, allowing everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. As we discussed earlier, the Commission follows Robert's Rules of Order except when in conflict with the specific regulations set forth in the Historic Preservation's own rules and procedures. This slide shows some of the basic rules of parliamentary procedure, which include the following. The rights of the organization supersede the rights of individual members. All members are equal and their rights are equal. A quorum is needed to conduct business. Majority rules. Silence is consent. 2/3 votes are needed for some items like to change bylaws, remove officers, and object to consideration of motions. 1 question at a time and 1 speaker at a time. Debatable motions must receive full debate. Once a question is decided, it is not in order to bring up that same motion or essentially one like it at the same meeting. And personal remarks in debate are always out of order. Robert's Rules also discusses the stages of a meeting, which starts with a call to order by the chair and then moves into the reading and approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Next, any reports are made before moving on to any unfinished business from the previous meeting. After that, new business is discussed, and at the conclusion, the chair motions to adjourn the meeting. A motion is when one commissioner introduces a piece of business or proposes a decision or action. It's a proposal that the entire membership can vote on. Robert's Rules outline several different types of motions. The most common is a main motion, which introduces a new item. A subsidiary motion is one that changes or affects how to handle a main motion. For example, an amendment to a motion on the floor. A privilege motion is one that is urgent but unrelated to pending business. An incidental motion deals with questions of procedure that arise out of another pending motion or item of business. And a motion to table kills the motion on the floor, and a motion to postpone delays the vote. A motion follows the steps shown here. First, a motion is made by a commissioner who signals the chairperson. Another commissioner must then second the motion. The chairperson then restates the motion, and the commission moves into debate. After the debate period, the chairperson restates the motion and calls for a vote. Lastly, the chairperson announces the result of the vote and any further instructions. The rules of debate outlined in Robert's rules are as follows. The chair designates the order of speakers, and the commissioners cannot indicate their desire to speak until the previous speaker is finished. Preference is given first to those who have not yet spoken. Individuals may speak twice for up to 10 minutes each on any given motion. Any change to this requires a 2/3 vote to either further limit or extend debate. And this is where I'll interject here, and that's one of those examples where we follow our own rules and procedures, where we don't follow Robert's rules. If debate over a single motion is running long or otherwise creating tension, a motion for a previous question allows for the chair to close the debate and move the motion into an immediate vote. We wanted to provide a few tips for debate. So just stated here, alternate speakers, stay on topic, avoid criticizing individuals, and always direct comments to the commission chair. Next, we'll move on to amending motions. Amendments to motions are made to strengthen agreement by changing the wording of a made motion. This can be achieved by inserting, striking out, or substituting words or paragraphs within the main motion. Charleston County utilizes what's known as the friendly amendment system, where if the first and second to the original motion agree with the suggested changes, the amended motion may be voted on without a separate vote to approve the amendment. Robert's rules does not discuss the friendly amendment system. Instead, the process would be to vote on the amendment and then vote on the main motion. Certain situations might need attention during the meeting, but don't require a motion, second, debate, or voting. And these are called points. And it is permissible to state a point during a meeting where the chairperson needs to handle the situation immediately. So there are 4 different types of points: a point of order, point of information, point of inquiry, and point of personal privilege. A point of order is used when there is a breach in the rules or improper procedure or a breaching of the established practices of the commission. A point of information is used when a member needs to bring up an additional point or information so that members can make fully informed votes. A point of inquiry is used to ask for clarification in a report to assist with decision making. And lastly, a point of personal privilege can be stated to address a personal need, like the temperature of the room or an inability to hear a speaker. Lastly, we just wanted to provide some suggestions for chairpersons to ensure a smooth meeting. So you can see them listed here. Follow the agenda to keep the group moving. Let the group do its work. Don't overcommand. Control the flow of the meeting by recognizing speakers or members who ask to speak. Let all members speak once before allowing anyone to speak a second time. When discussions get off track, gently guide the group back to the agenda. Always model courtesy and respect and insist that others do the same. Help to develop the commission skills in parliamentary procedure. Giving each speaker your undivided attention, keeping an emotional pulse on the discussions, and allowing a consensus to have final authority over the group. That's all I had today. Any questions?
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is the director's remarks.
Just wanted to say, of course, welcome to the new members that are on board with us. We will be, this was the beginning of our first stage of education sessions. We wanted to start with Robert's Rules. At the next meeting, we'll get into a little bit more, a little deeper. Emily, Andrea, and myself, we are in discussions, and with Mark as well. We're in discussions with some of the other counties that have historic preservation commissions and architectural review boards, and with also the jurisdictions that are around in the county. And we hope to come forward with some proposals to help refine more the Historic Preservation Commission's roles and what state law allows, of course. And then, because we want to better define for the Historic Preservation Commission what the parameters are for making motions and votes on properties and districts. And that may entail, depending on what the districts want, that may entail us embarking on doing overlay zoning districts in some of these districts, historic districts. We've already started that with the 10-mile community, with the town of Mount Pleasant staff, to address some of the things that are not really properly addressable by a Historic Preservation Commission, like actual zoning density and lot sizes. It seems like the 10-mile community has expressed interest in changing their zoning district from R4 to S3, which would allow them to have a little bit more of a settlement community development pattern over the years, rather than that more urbanized one that you see in some of the applications that we've seen. But we'll see what happens with that. We're meeting with the town Thursday to discuss further, the town staff. And as I said, the residents in the 10-mile community that we have spoken to have expressed their desire to make this change as well. And there may be others in the future. Some of the other districts might want to have specific things within their historic districts, like introduction of maybe some commercial uses in them, which was historically part of the settlement communities which have been zoned out now. We want to look at that and some other things as well. So I guess as my way of saying, stay tuned. I think that over the next 6 months, we will be bringing forward to the commission educational material. I think we will have some speakers from Historic Charleston Foundation and come and speak with us, and hopefully some others as well. All right.
Thank you. If there is no further business, this meeting of the Charleston
I have
County.
a question.
Yes.
Could you tell us the difference between an R4 and S3?
Sorry about that. The R4 is our most dense single-family detached residential zoning district. It allows up to 4 dwelling units per acre. But I think for what the commission has seen, more importantly, it allows a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. The S3 zoning district, which actually was written primarily for the settlement communities, it's just that 10 Mile at the time did not select that as their desired zoning district. The S3 zoning district allows up to 3 dwelling units per acre, but more significantly, the minimum lot size is 12,500 square feet. So as you can imagine, if a neighborhood developed at the maximum density and the minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet is going to take on a totally different character than a neighborhood that's developed at the S3 density with that 12,500 square foot minimum lot size.
Is that what Phillips has?
That Phillips is S3, that's correct, yes.
Okay, and I'm wondering if the 10 Mile really understands what 3 units per acre will look like. And I'm asking that because when you look at the way the community was originally and it is in many ways right now, it's not 3 units per acre. And I just wonder if they really know what they're getting themselves into if they go to 3 units per acre. I think it should be less dense. That's my personal opinion, but I feel pretty strongly about that.
Well, we've met with the community several times. They understand the current zoning and what the S3 is, I believe. And we will not request that they change the zoning to something that they don't want. If it stays the way it is, which is also a possibility, it will be completely different than what the S3 would the protections that the S3 would allow.
Okay, then I have a second point, and that is the appearance of anything new that is built in these communities. And it came up the last time, and it was explained that there's nothing that we can do about the style, the architecture of what is built in these communities, and it looks absolutely nothing like what they are now. And there are a lot of reasons for why the buildings there look the way that they do that I won't go into. But I'm very concerned about the new styles. Last month, the applicant came in with craftsman style architecture, which looks nothing like it belongs in a settlement community. And I'm wondering if somebody were to go into any of these communities and see craftsman style or any other sea islands, they called it Isle of Palm style before, how are they going to know that they're in a settlement community? I have a big issue with that, and I personally think it needs to be addressed. And I revisited the ordinance that we're supposed to act according, and it says we're supposed to safeguard the integrity and foster the preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation of these communities. And not having a say-so or anything that we can do to protect the style of what's built there, people will not know that they are in a settlement community anymore. Does anyone understand what I'm saying? It sounds like not.
No, I do understand.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Sullivan, I do understand what you're saying. I understood last month and I understand now. I guess I'm just stuck because the homes that are there, people who are buying property within that community, they're not going to build like the houses. They're just not going to, and I don't know if it's fair to ask them to build a cinder block home. I hear you, and I understand. I just don't know how realistic it is.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not saying build a cinder block home. I get that. And when they built the homes that are there now, they weren't thinking of what they looked like. They were thinking of what materials were available. And so it is possible to come up with a style that kind of keeps the look of the settlement community in mind. Okay. I'm probably going to get in trouble by saying this, but I'm going to say it. I went to an event earlier this month that was put on by the Historic Charleston Foundation. They were talking about Union Pier, and we had just come off of this meeting where the Craftsman style house was approved, and I just thought we are doing such a disservice to these communities by allowing Craftsman is a very old style, but it's not typical of the settlement community. So I said something to, actually, the current president is a friend of mine. So I made a comment to him, and then he introduced me to somebody on his staff who said, we know exactly what you're talking about, and we can help you come up with some kind of parameters that you can work with in order to approve or not approve what's going into these communities. And if we don't do something like that, they're all going to look like all of the big settlements, all the big modern communities that we have right now. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and we had the same discussion with Historic Charleston Foundation folks. That's why I at the beginning when I was talking, we want to have them come in and help us create some of these parameters, but we need to have those guidelines and those things before we can, so that everyone is talking the same language. And studies need to be done of the typical architectural styles in each one of the communities, so that everyone's in agreement on the style, and including and especially the community members themselves, because what occurred at the last month's meeting was that it appeared, and even after talking to the community members afterwards, they had no problem with the proposed architecture of the proposal that was heard by the commission at all. And so there's going to be some education for the community members as well to ask what they want for their community, because there is a little bit of an eclectic type of architecture that goes throughout the community. Some of them are newer and they are more of a modern low country look, and some of them have not been touched in 60 years, and it's the typical brick ranch. So somewhere in between is where that is going to fall. And until we do that, I would say that the Historic Preservation Commission has every right to discuss the style and the type of architecture, but I want to be sure that to help the Historic Preservation Commission, I want us to keep refining and get some of these guidelines in place so that it doesn't appear that we're just that everyone is putting their own personal view on it.
Okay.
Right.
I misspoke myself. It was the Preservation Society. They're the ones who had the Union Pier. It was their president I spoke with.
I would just like to interject with last month's meeting. If the community doesn't have an issue with the style of it, I feel that we don't stand as the authority to say what a house should look like in an area if they are in agreement with that style. I would think that in order for us to make changes like that, which I wouldn't agree with, the Planning Commission will probably have to get involved in other entities as well to put something in writing to say that, this style of home can't be built in this area. And again, if the community agrees with it, this is 2023, and those homes were probably built by families and by their own hands. So the houses are not going to look like that. And I feel it's unrealistic to even ask, a builder to build a house in that style in the modern day.
I again, to reiterate, any parameters that we would come up with, I think would have to come with strong community involvement and support, because it would be a tragedy to have a Historic Preservation Commission created And then the communities themselves, which the commission is trying to protect, they're not in favor of what the Historic Preservation Commission is promoting as to what they think is good architecture for their neighborhood.
Exactly. Thank you. Any other comments, Ms. Johnson?
Okay, thank you. I just want to first reiterate that we do have to have buy-in from the community as to what they want, who they are, what kind of new homes they want to see. That should be up to the community and not us. While we are trying to preserve the community, I think clarity has to be made about, are we trying to protect the landscape of the area, you know, the pattern, the land pattern? Are we trying to protect the type of buildings? You know, the architect needs to be clear what to me, what it is that we are trying to preserve. Because I do have people that feel like they should be able to build a modern home if they want to in a what we call a historical community. A lot of people don't even know that they're in a historical community. So that's something I think we just need to be talking with the communities more for them to understand some of the historical values of their community and what we're looking at trying to help them preserve. So that part probably needs to be clear for them and for us.
Commissioner Crowley?
Thank you. This is just more of a suggestion or a topic of discussion for staff. No worries. One thought or approach, because we have not had very many districts or individuals, and I think individual designation nominations are a little bit different because it's one single structure. You sort of have a sense of what it is. But for the districts, we haven't had very many. And I think it can be argued that this commission is new enough that it's still a work in progress and evolution, but either through the nomination process or immediately after a district is designated, if it's through the nomination process, maybe looking at the application and form of before the commission votes on it, are we getting all of the correct baseline documentation? You know, like a national register for historic places, historic district designation is a lengthy document. And, you know, once upon a time, they used to be a page and a half long. And today you can compare the difference between Phillips' recent designation report from Charleston County and their national register designation report. And they are hundreds of pages different in detail and length. And perhaps not to put more work on the limited capacity of staff, but perhaps there is something that we need to be getting a bit more understanding so that we can say whether a community has a range of styles that is typical to look at or not, so that we know not to be focusing on that height, you know, scale, mass, setbacks, things like that, to get that baseline in so that we know in the future if something is designated in 2020 and in 2030 there's something coming up, we know what it looked like at the time. Or after it's designated, to work with the community and partners to do an area character appraisal of it at the time of designation to, again, understand what it looks like. And there's examples, I think, of both in, in the city of Charleston to look at for models, but hopefully the preservation experts can provide some of those resources and guidance. But that would be a way, because I don't want us to also put together a typical styles book or some typical materials book or something like that that may make sense in East Cooper but not the southern part of the county. And these are very unique, vernacular, contextually specific areas. All the communities we've designated so far are very different from one another. So a one-size-fits-all isn't going to work either, but that could come out of a basic guidance through the designation process.
Yeah, I could. Yes, I know that the discussions we're having may be disappointing, to some folks that when we thought we were getting, especially the historic districts, that we thought there would be a lot more latitude, and we're learning more about state law and learning more what the other jurisdictions that have learned the hard way through lawsuits, what historic preservations and ARBs should or shouldn't be looking at. The only thing I want to say was that to me, it's still a good thing that we have this and that there are historic districts. The historic district designation, I'm looking at it now after learning more over the past year or so doing it, is a good first step. We would not be talking to the 10-mile community about doing an overlay district and about looking at rezoning, changing the zoning to less dense zoning, or to talk about having commercial uses back in the 10-mile community, which was historically there, if they first didn't start out as a historic district to recognize that, hey, there's something special about this area. Same with Phillips community, so, and I think each district is going to be different. Each one's unique. As you said, there may be nothing architecturally that really needs to be looked at. Maybe it's something else, and that can be written into an ordinance and codified, or the parameters for the Historic Preservation Commission for consideration for that district would be unique compared to the other ones. So that's what we sort of have to work through, I think, over the next few months to figure out how we attack it that way. Yeah. Those are just my thoughts. And to correct myself, it was who did we meet with yesterday? Say it. Preservation. It was a preservation society we talked to. And then we talked to the architecture review board staff at the city, where they have the type 1 and the type 2. So yeah, we talked a long time with them about the sort of trials and tribulations that they've had, over the years. Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Sullivan has a comment, and then Ms. Johnson, and then that should be it.
Another topic, taxes. They pay taxes based on the value of the house. So the value of most of the houses over there is probably not like in your typical suburban neighborhood. There are a lot of people in these settlement communities who don't have a lot of money to pay taxes. So if we allow really expensive houses to go in there, that's going to raise the taxes of everybody in the community. So that's another thing that I'm wondering if we can pay some attention to and see if there's a way to allow the settlement communities to pay a lesser tax to help them out.
Excuse me, respectfully, but how do you know what they have?
How do I know what they have? What do you mean?
What they have to pay? I mean, how do you know?
Because I know the guidelines. They pay 4% of the fair market value.
I don't think that is in our purview to discuss respectfully. I don't think this commission is over taxes or anything of that nature.
So it came up last time. The house, the Craftsman style house, is going between two other Craftsman style houses that, according to the tax rolls, are worth about $800,000. And it's going to, when the evaluations come up, it's going to raise the evaluations for the community. Y'all tell me if I'm right or wrong. So as we allow more expensive houses to go in, then their cost of living is going to go up, and some of them won't be able to stay there anymore. And maybe if we can't do anything about it, is there somebody who can be spoken to take this on?
Well, we can, as part of our education series that we'll be doing, we can have the assessor come and speak about the taxes and how that works. I've attended several of them. It seems to me, and I experienced myself, I live in a neighborhood that has, and I think most everyone else has, if you live in Charleston County, that has gone up in value significantly over the past 20, 25 years. The 15% tax cap, if you're the owner occupier of that house, really buffers you and protects you from a new home buyer coming in, or from the land going around you, the taxes going up, because you're capped at 15% of what you were the 5 years before. The assessment, from what I understand, occurs every 5 years. So even if your house went up $1 million in that 5 years in value, you're not going to pay any more than 15% of what you paid 5 years ago in your taxes. Now, where I have heard that it has been a problem is in heirs property, which, of course, unfortunately, that's where a lot of heirs property is located in the settlement communities, and that is a different animal, and I can't speak on that, but I have heard that the taxes are, of course, they're a certain amount, and then when the title does get cleared, someone gets hit with the full amount all at once, which is something that we need to talk to the assessor about. And I know, Ms. Johnson, I think you know a little bit about that too, but Pearl was talking about it to me the other day, about that same scenario, yeah.
Ms. Johnson was first, and then
First, with the taxes, I think I understand what Ms. Sullivan is saying, and we probably all may have a concern about not wanting to do something that would cause any harm to settlement communities. But this is not the board to regulate that, to me. If we have problems or concerns like this, then this is what needs to be brought to the council, not to us. And they need to address that. Needs to be addressed, but not here, to me. And I'm just reminded that the first time we talked about having the Historic Preservation Commission here, I was one of those people that was pushing for it because of the Gresham-Megget building that we wanted to preserve, and wanting to get funding for repairs to that building. It's a historical school built in 1953, for those who may not know it. And when I saw that we could not secure funding through the National Historic Registry because we didn't have a local Historic Preservation Commission, that is what precipitated this board today, as I recall. And so I don't want us to get so tied up into the community as, the only or the main issue for historic preservation. The first thing we were trying to do is deal with a school building. And then we went to the graveyard because we wanted to make sure that there wasn't development happening in areas where there might be a cemetery. So those are things that can be dealt with without having a historic community. And I'd like to see, I know there are buildings and sites like that all over that we could be working on. Not to say that we shouldn't be working on protecting the historic settlement communities, but got some education to do, and I don't know where, that probably is in planning, where people who live in the settlement communities need to know that they live in one. So they don't know that. They don't understand that. They don't know these things we're talking about you know, the style of the building and protecting all. They don't know that. Some people, they want to be able to build what they want to be, what they want to build in the community. Of course, we have zoning regulations for that. So all I'm saying is let's just, you know, try to concentrate on some things that's not so complicated while we are trying to develop this commission, because we are developing here. And in the process, if we have a community that wants to be recognized historically as a settlement community, that's a good thing too, but we need to have some information to give them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jason?
I just had a quick question. If there were any properties or districts in the pipeline, community groups that you are currently working with that we might expect this year?
Yeah, we've had preliminary discussions with the Red Top community in Johns Island, mailing address, West Ashley, at the end of Beast Ferry. We've been talking with them for over a year now, but it seems like they are pretty motivated to move forward. I did attend a community meeting I think it was last month out there, and it was very well attended, and I was able to pass out applications and things like that. So that's something to consider. And then also about 8 months ago now, we met with members of the Snowden community. So they're actually working on petitioning behind the scenes. I think that might be a lengthier process. I think there are some conflicting interests within the community, so I'm not certain if they're going to move forward.
Okay. All right. Okay, if there is no further business, this meeting of the Charleston County Historic Preservation Commission stands adjourned. The commission will hold its next regularly scheduled meeting on March 15th, 2023 in council chambers.